welcome. I'm so happy that you're here, and for those of you that will be joining us later, we welcome you as well. This is going to be a wonderful journey of entering into what the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is really talking about as an awakening tool for higher consciousness and for us to know and understand our higher self and embrace our higher self as us. What I want to do is to have this be an interactive type of event, where you can get your questions answered. So I always start my events and celebrations and whatnot that I do, which I've been doing since I was ordained as a Priestess of Mary Magdalene, by honoring and appreciating the women who have come before me. Elizabeth Kelly is of the Holy Order of Mary Magdalene. It is an order out of France, and the women who have been knighted or have been ordained in this order, one woman a year is selected, and it's pretty much a very high spiritual. Elizabeth was in a writing group that I was in, and she began to tell her story that she was writing a book about the apparition of Mary Magdalene and that had appeared to her and changed her life. And something in me just woke up. It was like I couldn't wait to get to the next week's writing class. I was hanging on every word she was saying. And she was talking about her adventures, which I'll share a little bit about her, some of what happened as it impacted me. Traveling to the south of France and find out that St. Francis of Assisi had, he had been the one who really loved Mary Magdalene, and so he sent his monks down to her home on the Sea of Galilee in Magdala. And I was like, what? And then she told me that there was a Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and I went, what? There's a gospel? I had never heard this, and I'm not, young. I mean, and I've been spiritual, and I took my master's degree in comparative religions and did a lot of study, and I'd never heard of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. I was completely blown away. Then, of course, I met Kathleen McGowan, who has also had an apparition of Mary Magdalene appear to her when she was 7 months pregnant. And she said, I am Mary Magdalene, and I'm letting you know that your baby's going to be fine, but you need to know that. And she's like, what do you mean my baby's going to be fine? And sure enough, her baby developed a rare breathing disorder, and her baby was going to be ending up being in intensive care in the hospital, but they were going to pull the plug. And so because of her apparition of Mary Magdalene affirming to her that her baby would be fine, she said, no, you airlift this baby to UC Med, and she had her take care of the baby. So anyway, she was very much informing me also about my journey. And I talked to her at Book Passage, and I said, there ought to be a Magdalene gathering. And she said, oh yeah, there is. It's actually going to be in 2 weeks in Connecticut. And I went there, and that's where I met Shannon Anderson, who wrote the book, The Magdalene Awakening. And Shannon was going to make the pilgrimage to all the sacred sites devoted to Mary Magdalene. And she asked me if I wanted to join her. And oh my God, that was a life-changing. In fact, I haven't met any woman who has gone to visit the sacred sites, and there are a number of women who lead people. So if you want to know more about that, I'm happy to do that, to take you. But these women were powerful leaders in my life in the beginning, and still continue to be. Kathleen McGowan has launched her own publishing company now, and to give women a voice. She's got a new book coming out in March that will be on the Anna Boleyn story. And she is a dynamite powerhouse woman of full of rich, deep, profound Magdalene stories. And she's had more than one apparition appear to her. And she also talked about traveling and doing her books. When she was doing her book tours, a lot of women had come and said, you know, my daughter's had Magdalene appear to her in my dreams, or a lot of women. And of course, we see many women now channeling Magdalene. So the veil has gotten very thin, and there are a lot of people who are accessing a connection with her. So she's very much alive, and she was the influence of me doing this webinar. I wasn't planning to do this webinar, and then I, in my morning meditation, got the instructions, so to speak, of you need to do a webinar called The 4 Pillars of the Awakening Principles that I have spent my life trying to work on. And I said, okay. So a little bit about who I am. This is the picture of me being ordained on 10/10/10 up at Isis Oasis. And it was, I just went into an altered state of bliss. I was so happy, and I didn't understand exactly why. I thought maybe it's because I'm all dressed up in goddess clothes with these beautiful goddess women in this beautiful temple doing wonderful ceremony and whatnot. But I realized I was really claiming my holy self. And the process of claiming and stepping in and being seen and heard by women who are honoring and respecting our sacred selves is life-changing. And it was so joyous. I can't tell you the happiness that I felt. And it really made me say, from this point on, I'm going to dedicate my life, my work, to bringing the message of Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, as well her partner, who worked side by side with her, to try to elevate the status of women to remarkable women of extraordinary mastery level. So one of the things that's going to be happening before we begin every ceremony is there's a shift that's happening in consciousness right now. And maybe many of you have felt it or seen it. But what's going on is that we are moving into a period of time called the Way of Mary, which is the way of knowing the heart and leading by the heart. And the 4 pillars that we will be talking about over the next 4 weeks have to do with this message about the heart and how we will be living from the heart. And those who choose to live from the heart and are guided into the wisdom of the heart will continue to live a happy, joyous, and free life. And those who don't will struggle and suffer and have much more difficulties. And so even though we may have problems to solve and adversities before us, the tools that we will have and the guidance that we will have give us a greater choice to be at peace, so that we can really choose peace and practice kindness and have that as our things. So in order to honor that and open us, and also to enter the portal between the 2 beginning pillars that we will be talking about, we want to just take a moment right here and right now. And I'm going to light a candle. I'm going to light the candle I already lit earlier, the candle which you can see back here, to Magdalene, white candle of purity. So now I'm going to light a candle to Mother Mary. And the reason that I do that is because one of the principles about this pillar of truth and how we do this is in joining. So she is joined with Mother Mary in the high holy work that they do. We don't do this work alone. We can't even begin to, because we live in a world of duality. And the truth is that we are one. But in order to come together into oneness and to know our oneness, we have to join. So the process of joining is critical. So let's just take a moment and just put your hand on your heart and just take a deep breath. And just allow yourself for a few seconds to stop whatever you're doing, your busyness, and just to hold a beautiful, grace-filled intention of peace in your heart. For the peace is always there. The peace is always available to us. At any moment we can claim it, for it is who we are. We are the peace of God. We are the love. And for this we are so grateful. Understanding the truth of our being, knowing who we are, we walk forth through the pillars into the heart as we begin this journey together. Blessed be. Thank you. Blessed be. So, what we will be doing today is really looking at this book. Now, this one is really dog-eared, and this is the Gospel of Mary Magdalene by Leloup. And the reason and you can order it on Amazon. The reason I like the Leloup version is because of the quality and the level of the translation. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that. But we're going to take a Jungian approach to being with one of the most empowered women that is expressed in here. This is her conversations, stories about her, what was going on with her as a leader. It gives and sheds a whole different light on who she was and why she was considered and recognized and acknowledged by Jesus as an equal partner. And so this is what pains my heart and has been an ache in my heart, is that we have one of the most powerful examples of an empowered woman, and we have failed to recognize it as a culture, as a society. The Protestants don't really acknowledge Magdalene. The Catholics have Mother Mary. They symbolically acknowledge them, but there isn't the real expression and understanding of them as equals, as what Jesus was trying to do. As we go through this, you'll find that questions will come up, and sometimes they might be a burning question, so you can just raise your hand, or you can put your question, type your questions up in the chat box, and then at the end, we'll take some time to go through the questions. If I don't get through all the questions, I will cover them in the next webinar as well. And you can always email me a question, because I will send you the link to the whole video. We're going to be meeting 4 classes over the next 4 Wednesdays. And during that time, it takes me a few days after it's been downloaded and rendered and edited to get it out. So, but I'll try to do it as best I can, as quickly as I can. And so if questions come up, you can put them in the chat box, or you can just email them to me, and if we don't get to them, and I will try to address them as quickly as I can, or we'll stop and talk if we need to. But there's a lot to cover. I took a group of people a year to go through 18 pages. The book is only 18 pages long. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene itself, what fragments we have, is only 18 pages. But I took a group through, and it took us a year. We decided we were going to go through it very slowly, very methodically. Sometimes we could only do a paragraph because there was so much there in the paragraph that we would not only research it, but we would create a ritual around it. We would do it, we would let it percolate and drop into a meditative place with it. And it was an incredibly life-changing and powerful experience to do it that way. So we're only doing 4 weeks, and we're just touching on the highlights. There's a lot that is revealed here. And of course, I will continue to teach as, you know, as more and more people become interested. So the two primary translations, you can maybe write this down if you want to order um, the Loop version from Amazon, so you can read along as we go through it, and also the Gospel of Mary by Karen King. Now, Karen King is one of the professors of Harvard Divinity School. She is highly respected and loved and appreciated for the work that she does in the Gnostic work. However, she is Protestant, and so her orientation is father-child. The Loop was one of the Dominican, I guess he was a bishop or something. I'm not sure exactly if he was a bishop or, but anyway, he was at the pilgrim site of La Sainte Baume. And when you go to visit her cave, you hike up through the Artemis forest in the south of France. And you hike all the way up. I did it. It's not an easy hike, but I got up there. You go into the cave, and he was there greeting the pilgrims. I mean, everybody, the kings and the queens throughout the centuries have made this pilgrimage. It is like one of the most revered pilgrimages to make. And so he was there to receive the pilgrims and to bless them and to pray with them. And so he brings a richness and a depth and a love of Mary that I think, having been in her sanctuary, in her cave for years and years and years, meeting with the pilgrims. And the pilgrims make a journey starting in the El Camino in Spain, and they go up through all the sacred, this is what Shannon was leading me on, all the cathedrals up to Rosslyn Chapel, which is the last one up in that have a devotion to Magdalene or Mother Mary. But they're each tied to the chakra centers. And so the crown chakra is Rosslyn Chapel, which is in Edinburgh, Scotland. And it is a cathedral also connected with the Knights Templar, which is a whole nother story. And but each of these cathedrals, people would make these pilgrimages, and you make them 7 times, and then on the 7th time, you leave a cowrie shell on the altar, indicating that this is your 7th round. So Shannon was going on her last pilgrimage through that and took me to leave the cowrie shell. So just to give you a quick highlight and an overview of what's going to be covered, next week we'll dive into this a little bit more. This book has physics in it. Like, I'm talking about, physics like quantum physics, and the idea of what is matter and what is sin and what is our attachment to matter, like the Buddha nature, where they talk about not being attached and how to do it, and all the principles that would lead to why we suffer and how we can get away with it. And then Jesus lays down some of the fundamental principles, which are really important. The thing that he's talking about is there's a new book out called A Course of Love, which I'll explain more in the end of our thing, which basically is that we are now moving into a period of time which will be the way of being and being in our hearts. And so that's going to be different than the way of being, with the way of doing, which has been what we've been doing, building, creating, all this stuff. And those people who are called to do that will continue to do that. But the forerunners of Mary are the people who are called to the way of being. These are the new emerging empowered women. And so this journey is a start. It's to get us started looking at how to become aligned with these principles and vibrating in resonance with it. So anyway, he goes into what some of those principles are. And then we talk about the impact that Mary had with the other disciples, the men who are not happy with who and what she was. And so it goes on like that. But she also talks about her whole ascension process, which is really interesting because it's also outlined in A Course in Miracles. And I found that the Gospel of Mary is mirrored in A Course in Miracles. And I will be doing a series of webinars on that as one of the next things I'm going to be doing. And then she explains to Peter, in essence, how she became enlightened. And Peter's like, no, I don't think so. I don't believe this. That's not possible. I'm not going to go along with it. But it was really her leadership that caused the disciples to move forward, because none of them wanted to move forward. They were all scared that they were going to get crucified. And it was through the fact that she was full of grace, that she had achieved the right alignment with Source, that she was able to empower them to begin to carry the work of the Master forward. So this book was actually banned, back in the 12th century. And it was almost lost to us, the fact that we just have a few fragments left. But I love the way the book ends. I think that that's the most important thing. The ending of it says that they went forth to spread. And you always hear, you go forth, you're instructed to go forth and spread the gospel. And the word gospel means good news, right? But in the Gospel of Mary, it says, you go forth to spread the gospel according to Mary. So I was like, yeah, this is how powerful a leader she was, because it was her leadership that she got them to go forth and spread the good news. And what is the good news? The good news is we are spirit, where there is no death. And we are one with the love and the light of God, because we are the love and light of God. So Leloup talks about that what the Gospel of Mary Magdalene does is it awakens in us and frees us from the dualism where we split, the Big Bang theory, where we split into our fragmented selves. And so when I see you as a separate self, and you appear separate to me, and my ego is telling me that I am separate from you, and I have my separate house and my separate bank account and my separate, everything's separate, right? And the truth is it's all energy, and that's why the quantum physics is in there in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. And it's not about being separate, it's about we're alive with life. And the life that I am alive with is the same life that you are. So Joseph Rowe, Leloup translated the gospel from both Mary and the Gospel of Thomas from the Egyptian Coptic that it was discovered written in to French. And then Joseph Rowe translated it from the French into English. And that was just back in the 2000s. So we haven't had, although there was an earlier translation that was done in 1955, we really have not had a good translation in English since, it's only been since 2000. And I'm just looking around and I don't see people studying it. I don't see people knowing it. And knowing what a jewel it is, I just have taken upon myself, because I feel like it has touched my heart in such a powerful way that I've wanted to continue to work with it. So when I met Joseph Rowe, I asked him, because I started to notice, especially during that year that I was studying the Gospel of Mary Magdalene very methodically, I asked Joseph Rowe, well, what do you think? Is this going to be, is this a Okay, I was just checking on something. I said, I'm noticing there's a vibration and that suddenly I'm being able to see and understand something more than I was able to see and understand something before. And as a translator, when you take a word, you have to really think about the implications of the word. Words translated, especially in ancient languages, have deeper layers of meaning and have a much, it's not a black and white issue. It's like there's layers of gray, layers of culture, layers of, so there's a lot to take into consideration within just a word or a phrase about how it's being used. And Joseph told me the Gospel of Mary Magdalene woke me up. He said I was kind of an agnostic until I translated that book. So, and it was literally, he was confirming the vibration. There's almost like a vibration in the words that kind of, whoa, woke him up so much. The other thing that's happening because of your willingness, and I'm so grateful to all of you who are on this call or watching the archive version, is that there is a recovery, a restoration, a right sizing of making Magdalene bigger than life because of her being diminished so much. And yet she hasn't gone away. In fact, she's coming stronger than ever. So what is up with that? Why is both her and Mary really coming to a head these days? If there wasn't something about them, and you know, people say, well, she had sex with Jesus, you know, like that's the big deal, right? Well, that may or may not be true. I'm not here to argue that point, and whether they had children or not. There's definitely evidence or indications that they possibly did have children. But really, for me, after deep contemplative study of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, is because she became equal. She became fully anthropos, human, equal in relationship to the Christ. And he saw her that way. He acknowledged her that way. And she did it like no other. So there is much to be learned from her as to what and how she did. And that's what we'll be looking at. It's not complicated. It's actually pretty simple, although it does take some additional connection and understanding to really understand what is behind all of this. But it's a lot has to do with why he appeared to her, you know, because if male, female, black, white, night, dark, the duality that we live in, she is able to mastery the level of gnosis. These are the Gnostic Gospels, right? The gnosis is the knowing of the truth of the being of who you are, the knowing of the divine mind, the connection to the one, the source, the one life. And so because she had achieved that level, she's able to make that kind of connection, to be able to see a resurrected self as herself. So she recognized him once he appeared to her, and they both were in the vibration of it. So anyway, that's part of the joy of the whole thing. So for me, this is what she has become. She was the great demonstration. And in my study, I realized there are 4 basic pillars or tenets or principles. It's like if you were going to be a fully empowered woman and you were going to have a sphere of influence in the world because of who and what you are and how you impact people with your love, you would have to have some of these pillars of ideas like really in right alignment with yourself, sort of impregnated with you. Although this is a great painting of the pregnant Magdalene holding her alabaster jar. That's why you know it's Magdalene. So she was the one who demonstrated it, which is what was so fabulous. So pillar 1 is called Be in Harmony. Now, when I came to the section in her gospel where she talks about be in harmony, I'll tell you, all chaos in my life, right? So the teacher teaches what the teacher needs to learn, right? And so it's like, oh my God. When I have, disharmonious things happen in my life, and she's just saying it, puts it right out there, be in harmony. It's like you have to grab this principle, you have to know this principle, you have to align with this principle, you have to agree to this principle. If you want to be enlightened, there is no getting around it. You have to be in harmony. That's what being enlightenment and being enlightened is all about. It's about having a level of peace and harmony and joy in your life. That so the first thing is to be in harmony. But when you're struggling with the suffering or the hurt feelings or whatever, the unforgiveness or whatever is happening in your life, how do you go to be in harmony? And so we find that Mary, in her interactions with Jesus, I mean, not with Jesus, but with Peter, shows us how she's able to do this. And we're going to explore this in even more detail as we go through these 4 weeks. Here's Jesus's comment about Mary's. If I move this, I don't know whether this makes it easier for you to see this thing or not. Let me see the slide. If I put it down there, does that make it better? Can you see the slide better? No, it doesn't change it. It's still in the corner. Well, Peter is unwilling to accept Mary's elevated status. So Jesus wants Mary in the circle. Peter won't have any of it. And he's saying, must we change our customs to listen to a woman? He is like really fit to be tied. And the way in which Mary is so true to her truth of what she feels called to do when she's listening to the master and what he's teaching her, that she says, okay, I just move forward. And she puts aside, but when she does address Peter, she addresses him with so much love and so much compassion. And it's a real good learning example and demonstration. And she also lets herself have her feelings. She lets herself feel her feelings. There's a section in here which I could read to you. Just a second here. So Peter added, this is on page 17, line 14. How is it possible that the teacher talked to you this manner with a woman, the secrets of which we ourselves are ignorant? So Peter has asked her to reveal, what's going on, because he sees that she is definitely in a higher elevated state of consciousness. He notices that Jesus has really been very much honoring and respecting the inner work that Magdalene did to achieve her state of enlightenment. And it's quite obvious. Like if I come to you and I say, I'm enlightened, and it's all in my head and it's not in my heart and it's not authentic and it's not real, you can see it right away. So Jesus looks at her and he goes, oh my God, this is true. You have achieved this. And so, so Peter says, well, you better tell us what you did. What's going on? Let us know. And she says, I'm happy to tell you. So she tells him, and which is a whole nother part of the course. But his response to it is, how is it possible that the teacher talked in this manner with a woman about secrets which we ourselves are ignorant? See, he doesn't have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. He can't hear. He's so wanting to hold on to his cultural belief that women are less than and women are not equal with him, and he can't go there, so he's not going to accept the teachings. So he can't hear it. So he feels like that it's something that's been a secret that's been denied him, whatever it is that he's told her. She just totally gets it, you know. Must we change our customs and listen to a woman? Did he really choose her and prefer her to us? Well, he's not choosing her and preferring her, and like he doesn't have more love for her than he has for Peter. It's just that she knows she's one with him, and she's clear about that. She knows she's equal, and she's clear about that, and he's clear about that, and Peter is not clear about that. So Peter's block doesn't allow him to even see or hear the truth. Then Mary wept and answered him. This is on page 18, starting with line 1. My brother Peter, what can you be thinking? Oh my God, can you imagine? Here's a pillar of a man that Levi calls a hothead. She says, my brother, what can you be thinking? Do you believe that this is just from my own imagination that I invent these visions of oneness, that I invent this? You know, she's been telling him the story about how she came to know that she was one with God, just like Jesus said. And so do you believe me that I would lie about our teacher? So, but you know, Peter was not able to override his conditioning, unfortunately. So he had a very hard time. So now, oh, I'm sorry. This is the know the heart symbol meditation. And one of the things I would like to ask you to do to begin your own journey of removing your own inner Peter. I had to buy a little statue of Peter and put him on my altar to start my forgiveness process with Peter, because I noticed that especially now with all the things that have been going on with, you know, children being molested and everything. So is between now and next week, if you would set up a little altar, if you don't already have an altar, and you can put anything that you want on the altar that opens your heart. A picture of Mary Magdalene would be great, a little candle, a little box or something where you can write anything that you would like her to help you with, and you put those notes in the box. However you want to do it, and then we'll when we come back together, we'd like you to share about your process of creating an altar. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to do altars before. If you have any questions about it, you can certainly ask me and I'll be happy to. But I would like everybody to, at least for the next 4 weeks, to have some little area that has an altar that represents symbols that open your heart and move you into accepting yourself as divine, and that you are love and you carry the flame of love deep in your heart, the original flame, the all creating flame of love. So it's would be good for you to acknowledge that. So pillar number 2 that we're going to go into in this next webinar will be the dedication of her. Let's see, hold on here a second. We're gonna, I think I can. Is the dedication and focus that she needed and demonstrated for us in order to achieve her state of enlightenment. So we'll be talking about her enlightenment process through her meditation and how she meditated. And fortunately, there is a painting that was created, but we're gonna really take some time to explore it, and then we're gonna try to practice her meditation and have the same kind of concentration, focused, and enlightenment that she has, that she had demonstrated in our own lives. even if it's just for a moment. Of course, the miracle says if you can get it for an instant, you've saved yourself 1,000 lifetimes of reincarnating. So it'd be worth it to to explore it for yourself. Pillar number 3 is the manifesting of the truth of who you are. Now, this is probably the hardest one for most people, because the truth of who we are is that we are love. Love is the only thing that's real. Love is the only thing that heals. Ultimately, it cannot be, there's no wind that can blow it away. There's no fire that can destroy it. There's nothing that can alter the presence of love. But we have lots of obstacles and barriers to knowing and experiencing ourselves as love. And so love is not something that can easily be taught. It's more that what we do is, as we identify and release the barriers and lift them and remove them and do the practices of joining and connecting with others in love, in our hearts, that then we start to make these bridges, and we have these right relationships, and we get these experiences of giving and receiving love, and we begin to share the truth of who we are, which is to bring in the love, activate the love, and then extend it out to others. And it's the one thing that creates more safety in our lives than any other thing. There's incredible stories that I've heard. One of my meditation teachers, Betty Bethard, was talking about being on a panel at the Masonic Lodge. And when she was on the panel, there was somebody in the audience. It was a packed audience, and there was all these various swamis and gurus of different meditation orders that were also talking on the panel with her. But some guy charged the stage, very upset. And she heard a voice in her ear that said, "Stand up, begin to move towards this man, push out love from your heart, and just tell him you love him." And so she was like, nobody else was doing anything. And the guy was obviously coming down to try to harm us or hurt the panel in some way. And she did that. And she just pushed out love. She sent him love. She kept telling him, "I love you." Meanwhile, the ushers were coming forward to kind of wrestle this guy to the ground, but he just ended up in a puddle of tears at the base of the stage. And he had some very bad news that morning that had really broken his heart. He was all upset at God and was wondering, why would God have this happen to him in his life? And it was more than he could handle. And so he didn't know what to do. But I also had another friend who was on a subway train ride, and somebody brought a knife to him and was going to kill him. And he just looked at the guys, and he heard a voice that said, "If there's ever going to be a time when you're going to extend love, you're going to do it now." And so he said, "I love you, my brother." And he sent a beam of love to the guy. And the guy was so shocked that he fell off of him and ran away. So it's really, truly one of the most powerful energies when we embrace it and allow ourselves to accept that we are that love, and that love is what is ultimately going to give us everything that we want. So having women who are really contemplating and in the practice and learning about this empowered woman, about how is she being in her power of love, how does she do that, how does she become a pillar of love, that she could stand before Peter and she could cry and be authentic with herself, like, "Oh my God, Peter, how could you think I could say such a thing?" But not for a moment wavering from extending love and being love and giving him love. I have much to learn on that. And then pillar number 4 is walk forth. And walk forth is creating heaven on earth. So the whole reason for this gospel and the whole reason for these Gnostic texts is to help us to learn how we are supposed to be experiencing heaven on earth. We're not going to die and go to heaven. Heaven is a choice, and we can choose to be in a choice of heaven right now. And there are more and more of us who are awakening to this higher consciousness that would allow us to actually have moments of feeling like we're living heaven on earth. And then you walk forth as that, but you have to be, all your pillars have to be really aligned and strengthened and resolved, and your focus and your dedication to being in harmony and to manifesting your true nature, which is so important. Because if you, anyway, we're going to go through really studying and learning about what exactly were the steps and how she did that. So I thought I'd take a little bit of time here. Does anyone have any questions at this point? And then if not, we're gonna talk about in this next section the discovery of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, because there's an interesting backstory behind how and why it was discovered that I thought was important. And then we'll go on to the final closing information, and we can talk a little bit. I'd like to open it up for any sharing or ideas at the end. So as you saw, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene was unearthed in Akhman, Egypt in 1895. So these scrolls or concordex that were discovered were brought by Karl Reinhardt to Berlin from Cairo. What ended up happening with the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, though, is that it got shelved on a back shelf. And it wasn't until somebody gave a copy to Carl Jung, the famous psychoanalyst, that it made the headlines. And of course, his whole operation as a psychotherapist, the Jungian psychotherapist, in developing the whole Jungian form of, is on a consciousness. And so it was very fitting that he received it as a birthday gift. And so because he received it as a birthday gift, it made the papers. And so he helped to bring it to some light. But one of the interesting things was it was discovered wrapped in feathers in a niche in a wall of a Christian burial site, an early 1st century Christian burial site. And it contained the Coptic editions of other important Gnostic texts as well. It was together, and they've all been kind of lumped together. There's several of these books. They're called the Nag Hammadi Library because there were also discoveries in Nag Hammadi. But I was really intrigued as to why it was wrapped in feathers. And of course, feathers are what the bird uses so that when water comes on a bird, the oil in the feathers causes the water to just siphon off easily. So it would obviously help keep the parchment dry to wrap it in feathers. But this area was where this burial site was, where they discovered it, is dedicated to a lot of goddess worship. It has one of the most temples in the area that were devoted to goddess. It had one of the largest statues to a female that was found in 1982, which was Ramses' daughter, which is here. So there was a lot of kind of respect and honoring of the divine feminine in this particular area where they discovered her book. And there's a mummy in this area that was also one of the priestesses of Osiris, was found. this is a picture I took when I was in Egypt. Sorry, it's a little fuzzy, of the goddess of Ma'at. And that got me thinking, because Ma'at has the feather of justice. And the feather of justice, of course, is an incredible story, because we weigh the heart, in which the heart was weighed by Anubis using a feather and representing Ma'at's goddess of truth and justice, right? So if your heart is light as a feather, when they put it on the scale, then you got to go to heaven. If your heart wasn't light as a feather, the dog would eat the heart. So, and this is just the way the conditions some of these books were in. And these are the jars that were found in the Nag Hammadi Hills. That's why you have the name Nag Hammadi Library, which also contained fragments of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene as well, that were saved. I mean, they found literally thousands of fragments, but there's still a lot that's missing. The first 6 pages are missing, and a number of things are missing. So the Concordex were all made from, many of them by papyrus. They were also, animal skins were used as well. These were the first early books. So it's unbelievable that we even have any writings left, compared to what the book should have been when it was first made, compared to what we ended up getting. So we have some unexamined assumptions that have to be looked at, because the way the books have come out, and the fact that we don't even have a really good translation in English until the late 90s and the early 2000s. I've had people tell me, like, what does it matter to know about a woman who was dead 2,000 years ago? She was dead for 2,000 years, and we never learned much about her except for what little is said in the Bible. So what is the loss to us, to ourselves? And it reminds me of, and Eileen and I were talking about, what we need is a return to have a temple and to build a temple. So this is the 7th wonder of the world, an artist's rendition of what this Artemis temple would have looked like if it had been restored. Now this is majestic. And I imagine being a little girl holding my mother's hand, walking up the steps to this amazing temple, right? It's open, you walk in these pillars, and there's a beautiful goddess statue, and this goddess is standing before you, and she's honored and revered, and it's like, it reminds me of Shiloh Sophia is telling this story in her painting class about, she paints only the divine feminine paintings, and she had this woman who was being beaten up by her husband in her painting class. And so she has this white canvas before her, and she does this whole shamanic ritual to help them bring out the inner quality of their divine feminine onto the paper, so that she could paint an expression of her divine self. And then she hung it on the wall. And then she became obsessed, this woman, with whose husband was beating her, with painting divine feminine images over and over, till every single wall space in her house was completely covered with her paintings of the divine feminine. And suddenly her husband could no longer beat her, like having those eyes of that beautiful. So you can see this beautiful, here's a woman, this is Artemis, holding the animal, the respect of nature, the love of children, the love of animals, and we just had the bumblebee go on the endangered species list because of the patriarchal denial of nature and putting pesticides out and whatnot. Is just horrific. So, to bring the goddess element back, and having women have the courage to stand in their divine nature, to claim themselves as a priestess, to even have a temple to walk in, wouldn't that be great? I mean, we build a temple like this, boy, it would make an impression on people. Instead, what we had was we had a lot of castles, and women would be held up in the towers. They were owned by the men. They were moats around it, defending, protecting the castles. The difference between the woman who was in the temple as a priestess is that the temple of the priestess is the one who is trained to give to the community. She's either, if she's a scholar, she's giving lectures. If she's a dancer, she's dancing, but it's dancing for the community, dancing for the goddess, dancing for worship, dancing for in service to whoever she's adoring. And of course, the princess in the castle is being groomed for the man, to find the man, right? She is not, oops, I'm going the wrong way. So this is what the temple looks like today, the seventh wonder. The Apostle Paul shut down all the temples and closed them all down. We haven't had temples until recently because of the witch burning and everything. It's been really hard. And of course, women have all been told to focus on finding our true love, right? That you're considered to be half until you find your other half. Instead of the truth is that the love is in you, is whole and complete, and you are missing nothing. So what you need to do is to find that love within yourself. And once you connect with that and become a pillar of love, then you share that and extend that, and then you'll have a relationship that works. If you think it's going to come from out there, you can forget it. It'll turn from what we call special love to special hate. And people wonder, how is it that I love this man so much in the beginning and now we're getting divorced and I hate him so much? And it's because they were caught up in this lie that they were not whole and they had to find their other half to be whole. And of course, he couldn't give that to them because it isn't the truth. The truth is they already are whole, but they have to know it for themselves, and it's their work to do to find it. So we have all this mislabeling of Mary Magdalene. The woman at the well was mislabeled as Magdalene, and it caused Pope Gregory, he changed the course of history, and basically he said that, in his sermon that he gave, that Magdalene was the woman at the well and that she was a prostitute. And so therefore that followed suit with all the Catholic priests having to become celibate, which, caused hundreds of thousands of children being molested, and the priests could not be married anymore, whereas they used to be. And the ones that did continue to honor that were the Cathars, who were now being burned at the stake, and the books were being banned of the Gnostic ones. So one morning in my meditation, I was told to go to Marianne Williamson's website, and up popped her Sister Giant conference, which she does every couple of years. And when I went to the Sister Giant conference, the first thing that we talked about, 500 women came, and we talked about witch burning and the impact that witch burning has had on American women and how it shut us up. And it caused us to lose our self-esteem. And even though in 1969, the Catholic Church, according to when you read the Gospel of Mary Magdalene by Luke, the foreword, it talks about the fact that the Catholic Church did issue a public proclamation that said that Mary Magdalene was not a prostitute. There was no evidence of it. In fact, quite the contrary. She was, in Luke chapter 8, she is considered one of the financiers of Jesus's ministry. So she was actually a very incredible, wealthy woman. But now we end up having women who are suffering. We have men who have, because of the diminished status of her and the witch burning, we still have 4 million women being beaten. We have all these horrible things. 1 in 3 women have been abused. And this is all going on in today's world. 13,000 children a day are still dying of starvation, although with the Yemen crisis that just happened in the last couple of months, 87,000 children have died of starvation or are on the brink of starvation, of dying. And I go everywhere and I do a lot of things at a community level. I don't hear people talking about this. I don't hear women being outraged by it. And part of it is this fear for us to speak up and say, no, this is not good. We cannot have 24% of American children live in poverty. And the Marin County, where we live, the wealthiest county in the nation, one of the wealthiest counties in the nation, just released a report. In our county, 1 in 5 children are food challenged, which is their more gentle way of saying that 1 in 5 children have nights when they can't eat and their parents don't have enough food. So, there is such a need. 4 million girls are bought and sold into slavery, prostitution, and we have the 2nd largest trafficking city is in Oakland. I know these statistics are hard to look at, but I share them because I want people to realize that all of this we're 51% of the population. 130 million girls have undergone female genitulation. We're 51% of the population. And if we were all unified around this principle that we want the babies fed, we want children out of poverty, we want this to stop, it would be over. We would all pick up the phones, call the congressman. We would be voting for it, but we've all been distracted with all these other issues. And most women can't even stand up to their husbands, much less, stand up to a legislator. We just had a council of men make the determination for women's health care, and there wasn't even a Republican woman wasn't even invited to be on that council. So do we need to regain the empowered modeling that the Magdalene offers? I think so. And it might be important for us to really look at this instead of the penitent prostitute. I mean, of course, the other sacred holy woman that she works with is Mother Mary. This is a picture I took in Sharks Cathedral of her as the Black Madonna. That's one of the Chakra Center pilgrimage sites that you go to. And this is her today. The Catholic Church swears that it was just the soot from the candles over the years that caused her to blackness or darkness. But to me, they actually took her away and they put in a different, and it sent shockwaves, literally shockwaves through the priestess community, because the other marginalized person is the Black or the brown skinned woman who is not honored and revered. And so the Black Madonna is such an important integral part of our culture and a society of inclusion. And so for them to say they just cleaned it up, well, you can see it's clearly a different statue. The headpiece is different, the face slightly changed. It was just heartbreaking to see this. So, but Jesus tried his best. This is the famous Martha and Mary story, where Jesus is talking to Martha and she's saying, how come Mary's not helping me in the kitchen? And he's going, no, she's doing the right thing, because Mary is really intent on listening to him. She wants to get this, his teachings. She really wants to embody it. She wants to really integrate it fully and completely understand. And so she's not missing out on any of his, and she just goes ahead and and does that, and he supports her, in telling Martha, she's doing the right thing. So Jesus was trying so hard to elevate the status of women and to help women to understand. But we have, unfortunately, a lot of Marthas. I've personally met a lot of Marthas who are like, well, why are you doing all this priestess work? And oh my God, you call yourself a priestess. And I don't call myself as a priestess to do it from a point of view of a narcissist person who needs to claim that. I do it because there is a truth about the quality and the aspect of myself as being divine. And if I claim it and own it, and I am in my spiritual work, as a priest is for the man, and as a priestess is for the woman. So it's like we have the priest have been up here, and the priestess has barely been a blip on the radar screen, because it's only just been recently that it's become safe enough for women to even enter into claiming and taking back the priestess title and opening things. But we have to raise her up, and then once we get up to, because people tell me, well, no, it's about oneness. It's about oneness. I go, yeah, it's about oneness. However, you're not going to get oneness from here. You get oneness by being equal. Priest to priestess, divine, divine, then divine, divine merge, and you're one, because you're the one life, you're the one love, the one energy. There is no separation. The same life that I am is the same life that you are. But we got to help women raise themselves up. And most people won't even want to stand up in front of a room and talk, much less stand up in front of a room as a high holy woman and say, I am a priestess, I am a woman of divine holy nature. So the Gospel of Mary Magdalene became really critically important to me, because it's keeping the story alive of her power as a leader. Because she really, as you get more into the book and begin to read it, you'll see she is the apostle to the apostle. She is the one who taught. She is the one who led everybody. And she's an apostle because she never left his side. She showed such courage. She appeared to him. Well, that's what really sealed the deal. He was very smart to appear to her, because if he hadn't appeared to her in his resurrected light body, I'm sure she would have gotten written out of the Bible entirely. But it was Jesus who asked her to go forth and spread the good news. And the good news is that we are spirit, that we are love. And the Course in Miracles really shows us that she was the one who was able to see. She had the eyes to see. She really embodied and understood the teachings, which is a whole nother talk, which I will get into in the next few. It's tied to some of the other pillars. And of course, Pope Francis, it's been the first time we've had a Pope in a while who's really, the Catholic Church's position is that you can't have women on the council, because Jesus' disciples were all men. Well, if she's the apostle to the apostle, that means she's the head apostle of the men, which is what the Gospel of Mary Magdalene tells us. She was the true leader. It was her leadership that got them to start spreading the gospel. They wouldn't have done that if it hadn't have been for her. And so Pope Francis, in his wisdom, elevated her status so that she is now the apostle to the apostle. And that now opens the door to changing this paradigm, because we are definitely seeing that there is a call to rise up, a call for women to rise up, a call for women to acknowledge the truth of who they are and to embody their love and to join forces. And those who hear that call and feel a resonance, those are what we call the forerunners of Mary. And so we have two, finally the artists are beginning to give us artwork that has, instead of this, oh my God, Jesus is up there and I'm down here, penitent sinner kind of paintings, we now have, I am equal, I am strong, I am in my truth, I am in my integrity, I am here to love, I am here to care, I am here to extend support and love to all who come in my path, and I will be the great living demonstration. So I don't know about you, but when I saw these pictures and these images, it just like woke something up in me about another possibility, because I certainly didn't have that kind of empowered training as a child growing up. I had 3 older brothers and I was never encouraged in that way. And I didn't have a church that encouraged that. So, but things are changing. I don't know if you heard about the nuns on the bus. They're showing a much more strength and empowered woman, and they're starting to have conversations with the Pope about putting women on the council. And this was the convention that they had, which was revolutionary in one sense, because it was, there are 80,000, it's the largest organization of nuns, but this convention had to do with the ones who are the leaders. These are nuns who are running major metropolitan hospitals, social agencies, they are principals and superintendents of schools. These are the ones who are the real leaders in the field. And of course, you see, nobody's wearing their black habits anymore. So they're starting to look like a rainbow, which is great. And at this convention, which is, I think, about 3 years ago, Barbara Marx Hubbard was the keynote speaker to this convention. Barbara Marx Hubbard is the futurist leader in conscious evolution. She writes major best-selling books on conscious evolution, and she was invited to speak to these men about conscious evolution and the impact, which is, considering that the Catholic Church does not support the evolutionary theory, it was a real breakthrough for somebody to talk and be invited to such a convention of this magnitude. And when she came up to the podium, she was so moved and she knew what a transition this was in consciousness for her to be invited to this group that she just broke down in tears. And you can see her video. I know the Shift Action Network folks have filmed her video, and I think it's still available up there. If not, you can try and YouTube it to watch, because it's incredible to see her share consciousness ideas about higher consciousness to a group of women nun leaders. So, and of course, she has a new book about creating the planetary shift. And one of the things that she had in her book was passages relating to the Gospel of Mary Magdalene that contain what are called the secret codes of the Divine Feminine, which we will also be exploring in the next few weeks about what those codes are and how they show up and how they can work in your life and how important they are for people. So this is the translation in the Bible that also I really loved when I found it, which says that I tell you the truth, wherever the good news is preached throughout the world, this woman's deeds will be remembered and discussed. So it's like a prophecy that Mary Magdalene was supposed to come forward and impact our lives at this time, and that we would be remembering and discussing what she did. And every Easter, we do a special ceremony where we walk the stations of the cross based on her. What was she doing? What was her purpose? What was her function? And and it's a very powerful, as I think Eileen, you can attest to that. She's worked on the forgiveness table that we had. That was very wonderful. So hopefully you all can come for that. But it's actually mentioned twice in the Bible, this prophecy about Mary. So just what is her message? This brilliant alchemist, the woman who works with the oils, the one who knew the all. But why is she considered this? So one of the things is to understand that Jewish women were trained in the way of the oils, that Mary Magdalene has been painted a lot with this jar of spikenard, and they estimate that the jar was worth about $50,000 in today's dollars. So if she wasn't a prostitute, how does she get the money to come buy those jars? And when Elizabeth Kelly went to the south of France and met the Franciscan monks, she went down. They told her that the monks were at her home in Magdala, so she went and found the home. This is a painting that her friend did that depicts the actual wall that's on that marks the boundary of Mary Magdalene's home, that the monks are still there. And she tells the story of the generation of people that have been helping these monks, overseeing the monks in the town, and the Muslims that have been in service to caretaking the monks, say that Mary Magdalene had helped and employed over 100 widowed women. She was a highly successful businesswoman, and Magdala is on the caravan route to Egypt. So that's how she was able to get a hold of spikenard. And that this particular land, and they showed her, there are 5 streams that go underneath the land. And so it's prolific with growth of all of the plants and herbs that are involved in creating the libations and tinctures and things that were used for healing back in those days. So by employing all the widowed women who are considered to be throwaways and rubbish, she was able to help the people, be able. And the story that they tell is the legend that they say is that when she was of marrying age, she didn't want to get married. And so her mother sent her down to the temple of Isis, where she was to stay with her mother's sister, her aunt, who was a priestess of Isis. And that's where she learned about all the oils and how to do the oils, And of course, Mother Mary is the same way. She was, if you Google presentation at the temple, you'll find all these Renaissance paintings of Anna, the grandmother of Jesus, turning her daughter over to the temple for her temple training. So these women were not bimbos that just kind of like, I don't know what to do, or I don't know how to be. These women were deeply involved in temple training way early in their lives as young girls and young women. And they knew what it would take to be a pillar of holiness and show up and be powerful, holy, empowered women. We don't have temple trainings for women anymore. There are mystery schools now. In fact, I read somewhere recently in a blog, somebody said that mystery schools are now one of the fastest growing movements in America. That more and more women are remembering and organizing and developing mystery schools to bring forth the priestess, to train women to be holy. We're trained to go shopping and to get married, to find a husband. So here she is anointing Jesus, and the rule is you can't touch and anoint someone that's not your husband. So that's one of the big clues that they were married. They feel like the wedding at Canaan was was her wedding to him. And that's Margaret Starbrook has done a lot of, you can read her book, The Woman with the Alabaster Jar, and she tells her efforts to research to disprove that there was any possibility of them being married. And she found quite the contrary, that there was actually more evidence to support them being married than not. And she's also, when you read the passages about this, it's like she knew what she was doing. It wasn't, and of course, why on earth would she use spikenard? Spikenard, nard in Hebrew means light, and it has to do with genuine and pure thing, but spikenard is an herb that is used as a sedative. And he's about to get nailed to the cross, so I think he might need a sedative to help him get through that experience. So that was part of, the work that they did together. It's like it raised his vibration and allowed him to go through with less pain from the infusion of the spikenard. The Bible says that she anointed the head to the toe, and the scent filled the room. Very powerful infusion of this essential oil that is a sedative. And of course, this was a fragment that they found that talks about Jesus being the wife of Mary. I mean, that they were married. So, and here is, the painting that the artists are now coming forward to really talk about. This is what we should have been seeing all along. We should have been seeing the demonstration of the equal, the male and the female. You see her red on the outside and the blue on the inside, and his blue on the outside. And it's like they're just mirrors of the male and the female aspects, but all as one with the internal flame of love in the center. And that's what we have to get to. Instead, what we have, there was a few years back, I do every year the feast day celebration of Mary Magdalene on July 22nd. And it was a full moon feast day. And the Tiburon Baptist Church, which is right on the water, has a little deck that comes off the sanctuary that has this fabulous full moon. And the full moon was going to be rising on her feast day. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to have a thing? So I called them up to see if they would let me come and do a ceremony there. And I knew they rented their place out to other groups. And so I got the woman and I said, well, I wanted to know if I was going to rent it. And she said, what is this for? And I said, why we were doing it. And she said, oh, no, honey. She says, we know Jesus loved Mary, but no, you cannot do a Magdalene feast day ceremony here, in a Baptist church. No way. And I'm like thinking to myself, now let me see if I get this correctly. You believe that Jesus is going to come back when he's going to save everybody, right? And he's going to appear to help save all of those who have, are not, claim they're not sinners. They've taken. Anyway, you're going to run up to him and you're going to say, Jesus, you're going to be so proud of me. I kept Mary Magdalene out of the church. And he's going to be happy with this. Oh my God. It's so, the thinking is so far off instead of, what he was trying. And there's plenty of evidence throughout the Bible that he wanted her to be equal, that he honored her. Even this, but it's often been misinterpreted, like when this line where she sees him and he says, do not hold on to me, do not touch me. It's like the untouchable phantom Jesus has been interpreted traditionally, like, why don't cling to me. And she says, so it's like, what's happening is he's a spirit, so of course she can't touch him, and she has to learn that the spirit is in her, and she gets that and she learns that. So it's returning that life is teeming with life, and this is what we're all about, is that he is charging her then with the responsibility to go forward and spread the gospel. And there's many of these Renaissance paintings where you'll notice that his hand is right over her crown chakra. It's like he's almost like infusing her with the energy, like charging her with the message that I want you to go forth and spread the gospel. I want you to go forth and tell people the good news, that we're all equal, that we're all one, that there is no separation. And now, we have this horrific condition in our culture of separating people and judging people and polarizing people, and instead we're just going backwards, and we really need to raise the voice of the empowered feminine to be able to be lovingly able to go forth and spread good news, and tell the truth. And this painting on the left is the one that's hanging in Grace Cathedral. I don't know if you've been there to see it. It's over on the left-hand side of the sanctuary. And the painting on the right is in the Greek Orthodox Church. And one is the white egg and one is the red egg. And of course, the white egg is, associated with Easter, but the red egg is associated with Magdalene saying to the disciples, when they would not believe her, when they said, I've seen the risen Christ. And so she's standing by a basket of eggs in the marketplace when she runs to get the disciples to tell them that he is risen. And so she picks up the egg and she holds it up. And she says, he has risen, I'm telling you the truth. And the egg turns red in her hand, is the way the legend goes, so that they could believe her. But the Protestants still put the white egg. You don't see a white egg in a red egg in a Protestant church. You see only the Greek Orthodox do honor her and have always honored her as the apostles of the apostles, but not the Protestants. And that's part of the problem. So we've got pillar 1. This is the main teaching of not the main teaching, but one of the important teachings. And so we're just going to take a few minutes to kind of review this, because this is an important piece. So when I first heard this, be in harmony, I was like, no. I like being upset sometimes, and she's saying, no, be in harmony. So even I have to be honest in that I didn't like hearing that she's dictating to me in a very strong, very clear, very direct way, be in harmony. Being in harmony means that I'm going to take ownership to have my beingness in a harmonious state of consciousness. So, but how are you going to do that? What are you going to do? So she does answer that question. I don't know whether, can you see the words underneath that? Does that reveal, or is the thing blocking it? It's blocking on mine, so I don't know if it's blocking on yours. It says, take inspiration from the manifestation. So
I can see that.
Okay, great. So when you see a beautiful thing of beauty, right, which is close to the heart, and it inspires you in spirit. Inspiration is to be in spirit, in opening to spirit. So you take inspiration from the manifestation of your true nature. So what is your true nature? See, your true nature is peace and love and kindness and gentleness and compassion. These are all things that are, it's like the fruits of the spirit. Those are who we really are. And when we take inspiration from our true nature, when we remember a time that we felt peaceful, and or we were filled with love and we were sharing love with somebody, or we had a moment of kindness and we did something kind, then we take inspiration from the manifestation of your true nature. That is how you shift your consciousness. That's how you get back to harmony, is through remembering. And everybody has memories. And I haven't had anyone come up, but in case somebody says to me someday, well, I don't ever remember feeling love in my life, then you have to imagine, because it is in you, as you, and for whatever trauma that you've gone through, I'm so sorry. And but the love is not gone, because you are a living being, and so being a living being, you are one in that love, and you cannot not be that love. So that's why I just ask for you to take a moment right now in and just stop for a second and think about a time when you felt any one of these qualities, when you felt really peaceful, so happy, and so much love. Does anybody want to share anything, any time of that you had something like that happen, that you just remembered what a joy you felt?
I could share. I had the moment of that today, so that's pretty fresh.
Oh, good.
This morning I was leading a meditation class, and a forgiveness meditation, and I do them once a month, and it was kind of a small group, and it was people I knew, so it was very easy to drop in, and I led it. And towards the end, I started really feeling like I was receiving a lot myself, and it was just really beautiful. I was, I was sort of I was giving guidance around, gratitude and something about that, and I just really tapped into that, a just very beautiful place where I felt really connected and really peaceful, and that I was being shown something very beautiful
Yeah,
as something for me to step into within myself. And so it was just, all of those things, all of those qualities, really.
wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's great. And even as you were speaking to it, I felt myself open. I felt inspired by what you were saying. And I was remembering a time just recently where I had not been full of gratitude, and I had somehow been restored to sanity to return to a place of gratitude. And when the gratitude came over me, oh my God, I was so happy. I was so happy to be back in touch with the gratitude, and to have some gratitude, because there's so much suffering going on out there in the world, and so much pain that people are doing, and I was losing touch with, well, what am I grateful for, and even having that as a value. But oh my God, it was just, I was so grateful to be restored to gratitude.
Right. It's like gratitude for being able to feel gratitude.
Yeah, exactly, especially when the ego.
Well, I really find, times when I do feel stuck or something, that is really a beautiful doorway, is to just really find my gratitude.
And
It,
so for those people who are watching this in the archived, please email me your gratitude stories, or you can also post them on the Magdalene Angels or the Way of Mary Facebook page. Either one of those, we would love to see um, your stories and hear about them, because when you share those stories, they inspire, and that creates the restoration to, you know, being in your true nature. And that's why throughout the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, it says, for those who have ears to hear, let them hear. It's like there is a way to change from our egoic self of grievances and difficulties and judgments and then move into our true nature that leads us closer to experiencing heaven on earth. So Springer, did you have anything you'd like to share? Okay.
Hi. No, I just had to take that off of mute. No, but I think the time for me where I really was in that, just completely in that arena, was when I was with His Holiness the Dalai Lama.
Oh,
And I can't really put words to it, but it was definitely grace. And it was just gratitude was immense, let's put it that way. It was just a really special time.
yeah. And I mean, he and his people have gone through so much suffering, and yet there he is laughing and
Yeah.
joy and connecting to the truth of what he is and what the love.
He really sees you. You're really the only, when you're in front of him, you're really the only one that exists for that moment.
He
It's
creates
pretty special.
creates the alchemy, creates the shift in the field.
It does.
Yeah.
That's a great way of putting it, definitely.
Yeah.
It was experienced, yes.
His consciousness. And see, that's what we're all trying to do, is to become more conscious.
Absolutely.
So just in review, as we come closer to the end of our webinar here, is that the pillar 1 was be in harmony. Oops, sorry. Which was, we learned how she handled disharmony. We learned about the story of how she stood up to Peter. She didn't deny her feelings. She was brought to tears by his, indignance and his lack of acceptance and his unwillingness to love her and embrace her as an equal divine feminine beauty that Jesus was honoring her as. And so she shows us that, when we're up against this kind of disharmony, we honor our feelings, we express our feelings, we don't deny them, we share them. But then she still told the truth, in herself. She wasn't minimizing herself. She was saying, how can you think that? I would lie. You know what? This is not true. And here, let me tell you the story of what happened with me and him. And she goes on to explain that, and she does form an alliance with all the other disciples who are listening to her, even though Andrew starts off the whole fiasco with, confronting her, like, what is going on? Tell us about this. So anyway, you'll read more about that. And then, of course, the Martha and Mary story, where is evidence of Jesus really trying to establish that women have a right to their own spiritual growth. And we begin to see the emerging of her as a leader and her leadership, which will unfold as we go down. And I just remind you of the difference between the priestess and the temple. The temple is open. It's a community center, celebration, scholarly learning, libraries, all of that. That's good. The castle is the tower. Lock her up, mold around it. She's owned and controlled by the men in her life, in a lot of cases, and denied. And her cultivation is cultivation to get a man. She's cultivating her talents and skills to get the man, not for her own service to her community. And there were a few women that broke that mold and were able to break away from that. Pillar 2, we're going to go into next week. It will be this dedication and focus. And part of the mystery of this is actually found in the movie The Little Mermaid. Most people don't realize that the movie The Little Mermaid is actually a Magdalene story. So I'll explain that and how that happens. And her steps to her awakening are spelled out in that movie. And there's a meditation, and when those who are able to, and if you do go to the end of the webinar, you'll get a little gift from me, which will be a little booklet PDF that I'll send you on her meditation steps outlined. So you'll have that to kind of reflect on too as well. And then we'll also have a chance to look at, she was not only apostle to the whole leadership team, but she was also had her own disciples. There were a group of 12 women, and the Urantia book spells out who those women are. And some of those women that are named as the women who were her apostles, her disciples that were under her, are actually named also in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. So it really begins to paint the picture for us that there were a group of female disciples as well as male disciples, but she was the overall head of the whole gang, the whole group. So this is the painting of Mary Magdalene called the Smoking Flame painting that talks about the raising up to consciousness, the awareness of who Mary Magdalene is. And I swear to God, as I've studied this painting, and there's a couple of other paintings that are associated with this painting, to me it is if George Latour, who painted this painting, had a copy of the Gospel of Mary Magdalene in his possession. And in her ascension story, where she talks about how she became fully awakened, it was like he was following some of the guidance, some of the things that were talked about and shared about how she managed to awaken, become fully awakened, the steps she took. And so you'll see him. Okay, yeah, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm seeing the Little Mermaid. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and you see the Little Mermaid is looking at a painting.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So we're gonna talk about why this painting was picked, what's the significance of this painting, and what story this painting tells about her path to enlightenment and being a fully empowered woman. So and then of course the restoring of her voice and bringing forth of her message, which was the Little Mermaids. Remember, little Ariel loses her voice. So, and of course, the witch burning, according to Marianne Williamson, really shut us all up. The American women, that is so in our DNA, that fear of speaking out, of standing up and rising. I was just talking with a woman who has a 6-figure coaching business, very successful, and she was talking about being in a room with other men, and she found herself shrinking rather than being in her truth. That she's a very powerful, successful business coach, but in the presence of men, that conditioning, that DNA. And that's another reason why I find is, when you say what do we miss by not reading, I mean, in studying the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, we miss having our DNA restored. That should have been the things that were happening to us as children growing up. And here is, from the tarot deck, Mary emerging out of 2 pillars, the Alpha and the Omega. She is the beginning and the end. It's part of why she has a level of power, because she has gone the whole gamut. She's been labeled a prostitute, treated and abused, and then but the Omega, she's also connected to the all. So she has the full gamut of experience, rich and deep, and this is sourced from thousands of years ago, when the tarot cards first came out, or actually not thousands, hundreds of years ago. I should look that up. I did some research on it at one point when the tarot deck first came into existence, but it was a way in which to bring forth some of the secret teachings that were being suppressed in course, the Christians don't want you to look at the tarot deck, but there's information contained in there that shows. And here she is with her alabaster jar over her heart. As the whole,
I know it was before the 1400s because it
Yeah.
was being suppressed in the Inquisition, but I think it was a little bit before that when they started creating it.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so the next webinar is next Wednesday on January 16th. And then what's more is that at the end of the month on Thursday, the 31st, we're going to have a celebration live at the Sunrise Center in Corte Madera, which we call the birth and the rise of the divine feminine. And her birth, because we are awake enough now to understand that we are equal. So we celebrate the birth of the divine masculine in December. So it's fitting that in January we celebrate the birth of the divine feminine. And this has been a very controversial thing because it's like, how dare we celebrate the birth of the divine feminine? And it's done on the eve of St. Bridget's Day, and St. Bridget is the patron saint of midwives. So it will be involved in birthing ideas, birthing new life, birthing, and she's also a patron saint of the Knights, and it was the Knights Templar that helped initially to protect the pilgrims that were trying to make the pilgrimage to all the sacred sites to the divine feminine, and honor Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene. So it's a community circle, and we have sharing, and people come and share their stories and their songs, and it's just fun and uplifting. And every year that we do it, it's always something magical happens. So if you're around in the area and want to come, it would be great. I'll have all the information up on my website. And the other thing that we will also be launching on that day is that those that wish to be ordained as a priestess, I was ordained with Elizabeth Kelly and Lady Olivier, who is now passed away. She has the Temple of Isis in London, or I guess outside of London, that Celestine my friend went to see the temple. And she's an amazing woman, has an incredible Shaktipa that she delivers. And then, of course, Elizabeth Kelly is with the Holy Order of Mary Magdalene, which is this unbroken lineage of women who have been ordained throughout the years, an order out of the south of France. And they claim to have an unbroken paper trail going all the way back to the first group of women that Mary Magdalene ordained, who then ordained women. And it was a secret order until the late 90s, where they finally felt it was safe enough to begin to tell the story about it. To me, it's some people want, documented proof, and usually it's the patriarchal people that want documented proof. And there's a famous thing in the Course of Love that says that sometimes the myth has more truth in it than the reality that we're living in, because the reality that we're often living in is created by the egoic mind. And so what we want to do. So anyway, that's a really wonderful and beautiful thing. So we're going to be launching the connection for people who want to move with us as a group and be a part of our ceremonies and celebrations, and including Easter, and ending up with the ordination, which is the Columbus Day weekend in October. So, and these are some of my sisters, Magdalene sisters. We've all been ordained together that same day. by Elizabeth. It was so fun, so glorious. I loved it. You know, just to be seen. So thank you all so much. And we can take a few minutes here. And if anybody want to make any comments, what spoke to you, what resonated with you in this material, because I covered a lot of ground today. And so you can also send me feedback on email. A 2-hour webinar is a lot to pack in, and there's a lot of information to take in, and you think a simple 18-page book, we should go through it quite quickly, right? No. The point is to understand some of the backstory of how things came to be and the mystical stories, and just make it more rich and enlivening. So I'll open it up for any shares or questions.
Well, I have two things. I've just put them out, and you could talk about them or not. I'll leave that to you. The first one is, I'm curious, and this is not connected to Mary Magdalene being called a prostitute, but separate from that, I've heard from people over the years that there was in old times this idea of a sacred prostitute that was not a lowly thing. It was a respected thing. And I just am curious if you know about that.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in learning more about that.
There are mystery schools connected to the temple of some of the ancient temples, especially particularly in Greece and whatnot, that the priestesses were often involved in some kind of tantra or sexual work that they might have done. And so there are mystery schools that teach the tantra path as a thing that is sacred and revered and honored and respected.
Mm-hmm.
The intention of Pope Gregory in the homily that he put forth to label Mary Magdalene a prostitute was to minimize her, to diminish her status, to create the opportunity to set it up so that priests could no longer be married, because the church was coming into so much wealth at the time. And so what was happening was that if a priest was married to a priestess and they were working together, like many of the Cathars, because the Cathars believed that women were equal, just as they felt that Jesus was teaching. And so when the priest died, the woman would carry on the work, and she would also carry on the wealth, and she would keep the community together, and she would have the land, the church, whatever had been accrued. And so the church didn't like that, and they wanted to stop that. So there's two different ideas here. One is the purpose of labeling her a prostitute was to stop all of this. And the second is Tantra as a path of teaching sacred sexuality. So it's a both and question. It's like, yes, there are temple priestesses that were definitely considered to be working honest, and sexuality was considered a sacred act. And then there was also the rampant, we're humans, and people were playful and naughty and various kinds of things. And we have all kinds of, but it's all there. It's all in the messy mix of all the mythical stories and everything that's emerged. And ultimately, we would love to see the rising up of the sacred, honoring of sexuality in a healthy way, and hold that. But that's like a whole nother lecture.
Right, understood. Thank you.
In a whole nother series. And there are women now who are stepping forward to they call themselves sex positive women, and they are stepping forward and leading seminars on helping with wound healing and tantra training and breath work and various things so that people can get more in balance and harmony with themselves as a priestess and do that and step forward in relationship with the sacred masculine. But we also need sacred masculine who understand, as one of the beauties of Dr. Margaret Riglioso's work, which I thought was really interesting when she was talking, her book is on, her PhD dissertation was on the virgin birth mysteries. And there's a whole period in our culture, some 30,000 years, where there was a matriarchal cultural, and when they did archaeological digs in many of those times, there's no weapon of war noted. It was agricultural, matriarchal communities, and then all of a sudden, there comes this idea on the scene of rape. And what she noticed was the writings and the documentations that were all before that period, there was no talking about rape or no stories about rape. And then suddenly there comes on the scene. And so the women were leaders and powerful and effective and oracles, and revered by the kings would come and get oracle readings from the women, and there was all this respect, you know. But once the rape came on the scene, or the idea of raping a woman came on the scene, then it all went downhill from there. So you lost safety, and high consciousness for a woman requires enormous amount of safety. We have to feel really safe. So a lot of work that is done in the area of sexuality now is on creating the container of safety and helping couples to learn how to create the feeling of safety between each other, so that a woman's consciousness is free to rise. Because as one of the guys in our sacred masculine group that we worked with was telling me, he just had a shocking experience when he was in the East Bay with his girlfriend, and all of a sudden he saw that she was acting a little strange, and he realized she wasn't feeling safe where they were, and it wasn't even a thought in his head. But it was a thought in her head, like, okay, this is not a really safe area. I'm not feeling really comfortable where I am right here. And so we need that safety, and we don't have that safety. We're not even close to getting that safety yet.
Thank you. Yeah, powerful.
Yeah.
I'll save my other question for next time.
Okay.
Thank you, Christy.
All right. And Springer, do you want to make any comment toward the end, and then we'll close?
No, I'm good. I just wrote thank you, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you so much. Take care. Blessings to you all.
Bye.